Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks to everyone who's joined. My name is Graham. I head up the technology practice with Lincoln Recruitment, and I'll be introducing my guest shortly. What we'll be discussing today is the impact of AI on the Irish workplace, and myself and Lorcan will be having a bit of a broader chat around AI in general. Also, if anybody wants to ask a question, please pop it into the Q&A box, and we'll get to it before we finish up. Um, but otherwise, we'll get going. As I mentioned, my name is Graham. I head up the tech practice for Lincoln. I've been in the tech market in Dublin for over 10 years, working with all various different industries of companies of all shapes and sizes. Um, with me, my guest is Lorcan Malone, who's the chief executive of the Analytics Institute, which is the professional body for data analytics, artificial intelligence, and data science. I suppose it's fair to say Lorcan is a technology enthusiast, a promoter, and a thought leader, I suppose, for all things AI, both nationally but also internationally. Lorcan, good afternoon.
Hi there, Graham. Good to be with you.
And thanks for joining. Lorcan, can you just tell us a bit about the Analytics Institute and what it is you guys do?
Sure. So it was established 8 years ago, really as a platform for companies to share thoughts and ideas and experience and skills with each other. They preferred to talk together, we found, rather than talk to vendors. So they wanted to have a neutral understanding of what they could do in terms of their use of data and analytics. So that was 8 years ago when things were still starting. Sometimes it feels like things are still starting now again, but so that's how we started. It was a platform for people to meet each other, and that's essentially what it still is, Graham. Although now, rather than a few companies, we've about 165 companies as members and about 5,000 professionals. And what we do simply is we have about 40 events a year where we get companies together or individuals together or leaders together to talk about analytics, AI, strategy. We do training as well. So we do we have a skills framework that we designed in conjunction with our members, which gives pathways of progress through the profession with training mapped to those pathways with certification at the end. We also run diplomas in analytics and AI and in data governance, ethics, and the law. We run the National Analytics and AI Awards event and competition, and we run the big conference then each year as well, which is the Analytics Summit, which is on in the Convention Centre in October, on October the 4th, 2 weeks' time, and we'll have about potentially up to 2,000 people at that conference. We bring in speakers from all around the world. So we're really a network organization, a community about learning, about sharing knowledge and experience and skills, about getting to know each other, and then helping each other to kind of maximize our capability with data and AI.
And when I think about data and AI, you'd be forgiven to think that your membership kind of consists of tech companies or solely quite narrow. You're like, what's your membership comprised of?
No, our members, our member organizations are really anybody that uses data. That could be everybody. So anybody from Paddy Power who use data for betting and whatever, to the HSE, to the banks, big insurance companies. We'd have the big government organizations, Department of Agriculture, Department of Justice, the guards, the revenue commissioners. The National Transport Authority, so we'd have all of those organizations. The big pharma, the likes of Novartis and Pfizer, are members, as are a number of others. And then, large manufacturing people like Primark and Musgrave on the retail side. So it's really any organization or business that uses data to drive decision making or needs to, that hasn't got there yet, but needs to learn how to. So it's either those that are really expert or those that are starting out. Some are big technology companies like Microsoft and IBM, and those guys are all members, but others can be completely technophobes, so we get some organizations that are really starting out on their journey. But, it's for everybody these days. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, data can be applied, and analytics and AI can be applied to every business.
Like, I get a sense every time I talk to you, like Lorcan, like you're absolutely passionate about this, and it was quite a pivot, from what you were doing previously. Like, what do you kind of enjoy most about kind of working in this arena?
It's a good point. Yeah, I don't have I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a technologist. What really excites me about the arena is it's rapid change. I'm easily bored, as I think an awful lot of people in data are. We want to be challenged all the time. So it's moving all the time. So it's changing all the time. But that's fantastic. I mean, it's only 3 or 4 years ago we couldn't shut up about big data. It was all big data, big data, big data. Now it's all AI, AI, AI. And I assume there'll be something else. And there's Chat GPT and large language models. And I'm sure there'll be something else down the road very soon. Again, so it's always changing, and that's exciting. What I love about working in it, honestly, is the people, Graham. And I'm going to sound like a Miss World contestant now, but I love everybody. But it's, in all honesty, the people that work in this industry tend to be very open about sharing what they're doing. They're very humble about the mistakes that they've made. They want to learn from each other. You'll see it at our event, our summit on October 4th. People clustered together, learning, talking. There's a huge amount of knowledge sharing in it. Now that's slightly different if you were working in sales and marketing or in other areas of finance and stuff, where either stuff has to be very confidential or else by its nature it's very competitive. While our industry tends to be very collaborative and people want to learn from each other. So I'm always surprised, like you'll have Bank of Ireland and AIB and KBC and whatever in the one room, all sharing knowledge and experience. You'll also have the same from EY and KPMG and PwC and Deloitte. Organizations that, in all honesty, compete like crazy, but they're still happy to try to raise the boat for everybody by sharing their knowledge and experience.
Yeah, and like it's like that's a good point. I mean, I actually went to the Analytics Awards back in June, and some of my colleagues. That was my first time attending. Like, I think what struck me was, amid the backdrop, and we saw it at the tech summit as well. It was so popular, and everybody was talking about it. But with the scaremongering that goes into the advancement of GPT, etc., and like I was kind of taken aback by the number of stories and kind of the groundbreaking breakthroughs and like just of the positive ways that AI can be applied to a business to better society or better the economy or in general. Like, I mean, I suppose kind of for kind of encapsulating that and from your knowledge of all of these different companies, like, and even for the benefit, I suppose, of the broader audience, like what can AI be used for?
Okay, so it's a big question. First of all, yeah, I agree with you about the positivity. Generally, we're positive, Graham. It's a positive industry. It's a kind of can do. People who work in it are problem solvers. In fact, if you look at how people recruit in this area, to talk a little bit about your business, one of the things that's sought after by companies is problem solvers, those that are curious, that have curious minds and want to solve problems. They're the ideal people to work in data, because it's all about that mathematical mindset about problem solving. So that's really interesting, and I remember the Department of Social Welfare a few years ago deciding that they were going to internally recruit staff to come into their analytics team. And it was interesting. They didn't ask about technology skills and they didn't ask about communication skills. What they asked for was, are you interested in problem solving? Are you interested in, things like crosswords and stuff like that? And that's how they actually found the right people. So I think we're curious and positive by nature. Some of this stuff is ridiculous that's talked about AI. AI is part of your toolkit. When you're a problem-solving organization, when you're a data-driven organization, it's another tool, albeit a very sophisticated, very, very helpful tool. which will improve productivity and capacity and capability. But that doesn't mean it's some sort of end of the world thing. It's there's an awful lot of dramatic nonsense talked about it. It's an extremely effective part of the toolkit, but that's all it is. So I think in terms of where we will see AI and analytics, particularly AI, playing a more significant role, to answer the second part of your question, it's anything that's where we've got a lot of paperwork and we've got a lot of processes are the obvious areas. So things like the legal profession, where you've got millions of pieces of paper, or auditing, where you've got all these millions of paper transactions. Obviously, a piece of technology that can read, can absorb, and can generate reports really like instantaneously will dramatically change the way those professions are going to operate in the future. Call centers, anything where there's a high volume of data being transferred, and there's a lot of speaking going on. So something like a massive call center, those are going to change completely, because a lot of that stuff can be automated through AI. But it can be anything where you're looking at improving the efficacy of your existing staff, what you're doing, and also how you're doing it. So I think it can be applied nearly everywhere. Whether it will or not is another thing, because I think in some cases you just won't be able to replace that human interface. In most cases, I think you'll need that human interface. And also, it might turn out that a lot of the solutions are more expensive and complex than the existing problem there is. But then, if you look at things like diagnostics in medicine and stuff like that, there's probably fundamental things that can change there. We had a recent event in Accenture. We had some experts talking, and one of them said this is an existential change for companies, i.e., you either adapt to this or you'll die in time. Because if you're not training in this, if you're not investing in it, your competitors are. So I think that is important. It's definitely a transformational piece of technology. Another expert said this is a once in a lifetime thing, more so than the emergence of the internet. That this is more important. So you can see it's going to be a revolution, but I don't think it'll wipe out jobs like in their millions. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's just going to make jobs more interesting. We're going to lose a lot of the more drudgery aspects of the paperwork. We're going to do things faster and more effective in time. I don't think it's there yet, but it's definitely coming.
It's a nice segue into something I was going to read you, right? So, European Parliament's think tank 2020, the use of AI in the workplace is expected to result in the elimination of a large number of jobs. 14% of jobs in OECD countries are highly automatable, and another 32% could face substantial changes. Obviously, those stats are incredible to read, right? And when you kind of say existential, it seems apt. I suppose, how do you view the workforce in 5 to 10 years, knowing what you know? And is it going to be a drastic difference, or are the changes going to be a lot more subtle?
Graham, I feel ancient now, but I remember being in my first job. I was 17 or 18. I worked actually with VHI, and I remember us getting a fax machine in to the office, and all of us looking at the fax machine, wondering how did a piece of paper travel through the wire to get it. And we started learning about. We had dumb terminals on our desk, and we were told this is computers and these are going to change the world. And we all thought these computers would be doing our jobs within 5 years. And the reality was that just jobs got more interesting. We got much faster at doing what we were doing, and it actually created more value. So, I'm not saying there won't be jobs lost. There may be, but I think more importantly, there'll be other jobs created. So there may be a retraining of staff, and we see that already, Graham. We do a lot of training in the Analytics Institute, data literacy. We have a data skills framework. A lot of people are investing in skills in this area, and companies are as well. So for sure, the existential bit is, if you don't invest, if you don't keep your staff up to date in these technologies, then the danger is you won't survive. But that doesn't mean that the technology by itself will replace you. I think as long as you keep the skill levels up, you should be okay.
Yeah, and again, it's look, it's another study, right? I mean, and it's UK based. It was a PwC study where they were saying exactly that, right? So AI could create 15.7 million jobs by 2037, right? Whilst displacing 7 million existing ones. So there's a net boost there of 8.7 million jobs, right?
Yeah.
But I think the point around that was exactly what you're saying there, right? So like human creativity, empathy, problem solving skills, and applying that to kind of, the likes of the big sectors, education, healthcare, etc. So like, I mean, I suppose there's, based on what you're saying, and it's very true, right? I mean, how rapidly it changes. I mean, and then when we read these surveys and reports, we get alarmed. I mean, like to an extent, should we be taking these with a pinch of salt? I mean, how realistic are they, and how quickly could that shift again?
I'm not. I'm I really am worried about life changing fundamentally for us going forward. I think what I do think is there's a lot of subtle change that kind of is introduced, and we kind of, unless we're in this industry, we won't notice it. Things like Sky Movies showing you recommendations based on your viewing habits. They understand who you are. I mean, Google knows who you are based on the way you use your laptop on a daily basis, so the sites you're visiting. So there's a huge amount of information about you out there already. It hasn't fundamentally changed our lives in the sense that we still get up in the morning, we still have our breakfast, and we go to work, and we do the usual things we were doing 50 years ago, and we probably will be doing in 50 years' time. It's just the nature of how we're going to do those things that is changing.
Who I suppose would spring to mind? And again, like I said that I listened to a lot of kind of positive stories in June at the awards. I mean, who springs to
Yeah.
mind when you think of kind of standout innovators in Ireland?
Oh, well, I think across the board there's excellent innovation. I think you'll see in places like organizations like the banks where they're starting to do things like spending apps, so they're personalizing their services to you as an individual. They're beginning to understand how you work, how you save, how you spend your money, and then they're delivering services to you personally based on your behaviors. I think some of the retailers, online retailers, are amazing the way they're reading your behavior and then adjusting the performance of their products. Like we've an organization like Car Trawler that will very quickly get to understand what you desire when you're looking to hire a car, and will make sure to route a solution to you based on your preferences, based on your driving style, based on your budget, everything rapidly, so that you can make a decision very quickly. So there's right across the board, there are organizations that are doing fantastic things, and we saw some examples around detection of preeclampsia by UCD in a study called UCD Premi, which I was particularly blown away by at our awards. But across the board, our awards, there were fantastic companies doing some amazing stuff. And yet, at the same time, I still think we're pretty primitive in comparison to the way we will be in 5 years' time. There's a huge, broad difference between those that are laggards and those that are leaders at the moment in this industry. There's still there's a long way to go before we're maximizing the capacity or capability of this technology.
Like, is Ireland going toe to toe with what's going on around the world?
Yes, I think we are. We did a study a couple of years ago, a comparative analysis between Irish companies and their equivalents in the US, expecting us to be 3-4 years behind. And in fact, we were ahead of them in some capacities. We did an event in New York recently, and a lot of the companies there were very large, big financial houses and big tech companies, those that you would expect to be miles ahead, and you're in Manhattan and you're on the 42nd floor or whatever, you're thinking these guys are going to wipe us out with their adoption of technology. And in fact, they said to us, Wow, Analytics Institute, we don't have anything like that here. And they were really curious as to what we were doing and were blown away by the Irish community. So I think that's, you know, a sign of how good we are. I like the fact that the government has a national strategy on AI. They just produced their progress report recently. We'll have the minister at our conference doing the opening address. The minister that Derek Leary, that was the guy who launched that progress report. I think there's some very good things happening in Ireland. I think the support of the state agencies is good. I think Science Foundation Ireland are doing some excellent work. The universities are doing very good work. We've got a community here that's very exciting and vibrant. You know, we've got the Googles, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn's, the Twitters, all of those guys here with their European headquarters. We've also got the European headquarters of 9 out of the top 10 top pharmaceutical companies in the world. 40%, I think, of Europe's data resides within the M50 corridor. You know, we're a powerhouse, really. I think there's still a lot we can do. We need to invest more, you know, to catch up with countries like Singapore, you know, some of the Lithuania, Latvia, those countries that have really invested very heavily in digital. But I do think we're ahead of the curve. And if we continue to execute on a strategy like the government has developed, then I think we can steal a march. And we're in so ideally positioned, both technically, but also economically, given the way we straddle the US and the European markets. Our neighbor has pulled out of Europe. Fine, that puts us in an even stronger position, you know, leadership position. So I think we're the world's largest exporter of software, you know, so it's phenomenal.
So like EY there last week said that they were investing 1.4 billion into AI and had created its own, you know, large language model. And it was going to train, you know, 400,000 employees
Yeah,
on AI. Like,
yeah.
is this money well spent? And also, like, is there a danger here? It probably feels like my style of question, or is leading you to have to defend AI, but I think it's a genuine curiosity, right? So, is there a danger here that we could overuse? You know, and is this problematic?
There's two questions to that, right? So EY spending that amount of money, I kind of understand. EY are a good organization in this area. We work quite closely with them. I imagine some of their spend is definitely on, you know, as I was saying earlier, the audit function, all of those big accounting firms spend a huge amount of money on processes and staff, and you know, and that's their bread and butter, going in and doing massive audits in organizations. So any technology is going to improve the service delivery there and speed it up and make it cheaper and faster and more effective for their customers is going to be a worthwhile investment. So I'd say absolutely. They also want to take a leadership position in terms of their thought leadership in that area. So that's why I would say they're investing, as are PwC and EY and Deloitte and KPMG and Accenture. The second part to the question, you know, the whole idea of this being you know, is there a danger of overuse? I would say there's a danger of unethical or practices seeping in very easily. You own your information about you. It should only be Brian Keegan's information, and it should be nobody else's. So if you are the whole quid pro quo about the internet is you share some of your personal details in order to get information back. You know, everybody asks you to register when you're trying to interact with their websites. They're doing that for a reason. They want to capture that information and use it in some way. So there's always a danger that there will be unethical or unethical uses of this technology. The idea that you might be thinking that you're dealing with a human, but you're not. You're dealing with a machine. The use of the idea that whatever gets programmed into these systems are the way it's going to think long term. So we can end up embedding racism and sexism and all sorts of uh, shoddy ways of thinking about the world into these systems. So we have to be very, very careful. Then there's, if you can automate things, then you can automate war. So you can have robotic systems and drone systems that can kill and maim without any human intervention whatsoever. That's frightening. So there are frightening elements. So the ethical element is it's not the technology that's frightening, Graham, or dangerous. It's how it might be used.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. It was actually a question I was going to ask you, just around kind of how can we ensure that it's fair and it's transparent and accountable? Like, I think one of the concerns, it's been voiced to me, was around kind of, how do you govern for something that's growing quicker than you can govern it?
I think we've been pretty good. I think the European AI Act was timely and comprehensive. So I think, as we saw with our own data, what's the word? I can't. Data protection officer. She fined, was it TikTok recently, 345 million just for breaches here in Ireland. I think it was TikTok. We're quite strong. We're quite good on picking up breaches in terms of ethical use. So I think, it's hard for legislation to keep up with it, but I think it's been surprisingly good. Like, I think GDPR was extremely effective in changing the way we thought about data very rapidly. I think within a year it was like pretty well embedded in in the way we all think and act with data now. All I ever hear is can't do that because of GDPR.
So yeah, it's fair enough. Yeah, like, it's actually one of the questions I think we have from one of the attendees, which we'll get to in a sec. But and you kind of touched upon it there. Like, when you have large organizations investing bigger sums of money, I suppose it becomes a question of resourcing among competition, right? So, like, if you're a company that you don't have these sort of resources, and you feel that perhaps, again, it's a two-pronged question, Lorcan, you feel that you're underusing what's available to you because you just don't have access to that level of investment. Like, what is that going to skew competition down the line?
No, I don't think so. It may. I don't think, in most cases, I don't think so. I think if you've no money and you can't spend anything on this technology, an Excel spreadsheet is still one of the most powerful analytical tools you can have in the world. I mean, it's hard to beat it. It's still a brilliant piece. Like, I always drive my staff nuts because I always think, look, can we just get this onto a spreadsheet? It's a simple way of doing things, but you don't necessarily have to invest very, very heavily in technology. A lot of this stuff is free. ChatGPT is free. Even the pilot stuff that Microsoft are launching, 30 quid. It's not these. The AI technologies in the mass market won't be expensive. I don't think that's what's going to. It's more about how are you investing in understanding your customers, their behaviors, how to communicate with them properly, how to predict their behaviors, and how are you ensuring that you're changing your services and products to make sure that you're maximizing your knowledge of your customers. I think they're still fundamental questions. The technology is there to support that, but if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to compete well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So say I'm in one of these organizations and I'm worried about the fact that I'm in one of these roles that could be hypothetically replaced by AI down the line. Like, what are the kind of career options out there for somebody like that? And how, like, let's say you're coming from a completely unrelated field. How do you pivot into it?
It's a difficult question. I mean, some of our programs are designed for people to pivot from existing roles into data roles. So I would keep an eye on the Analytics Institute website and our training in particular, which I think is very strong, and it's delivered by practitioners rather than by academics. So it's up to date and it's relevant. It's taught by people who are doing the job on the ground. And that's one of our core values. I think in general, I think there's still a way to go with some of the free stuff that's out there that's teaching people about AI and stuff. But I don't think you'll get a job in AI by doing a quick course at the moment. I think what you probably have to do is train up a little bit and pivot slowly from one into another. It won't happen. You won't be able to say, "Oh, I did a 3-week course. Now I'm an AI expert." This at a technology level, this stuff is complex. On use level, it's not very complex at all.
Yeah.
So you can become adept at using AI, but you may not be a developer, which is a different thing.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think and obviously you're playing your part there with the Analytics Institute, but I mean, like, is there enough there, or maybe opportunities haven't got to the point now where there's an offering broad enough?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say you're probably right, Greg.
Just before we wrap up, there's a couple of questions from the floor, if you don't mind, Lorcan. The first one is the foundation of worthwhile AI sounds like it's going to be based around the quality of data we collect. However, data feels a bit like a dirty word now in context of GDPR. What's the best way to navigate data management and using that data for the purposes of AI, knowing the Data Protection Commissioner is watching?
Well, it's a long question. There's lots of parts to that, and I don't know all the answers on it. Yes, obviously the quality of data we collect is completely the most important aspect, and that data management and data governance is essential. I think before you even go down the road of AI, if you don't have robust data management and data governance practices in place, what you might end up doing is putting poor data into very highly automated systems, and almost impossible to get them out then once they're in there. So I think the question around quality of data is essential. I'm not sure GDPR has made data feel like a dirty word. I wouldn't agree entirely. What I would say is things like the AI Act and ethical AI in general has become more and more important. So I think what's the best way to navigate data management? Have data management. Make sure you have robust data management in place, robust data governance in place, and then you don't have to worry about the data commissioner watching you. In fact, I think the data commissioner watching you is a good thing, for not only for you but for society in general. I think if the data protection commissioner is keeping an eye on businesses, all the better, because we want, at this early stage of this new technology, we want the data to be robust and reliable. So we don't want the lazy data protection commissioner, quite the opposite.
And actually, probably it touches on the second question. The second question is essentially, is GDPR a consideration even for businesses when they're implementing AI?
Yes, of course. I mean, the principles behind GDPR are equally applicable. But I think the questioner should also have a good strong look at the EU AI Act and see that those principles are there as well. So it's the same thing, just adopted for AI. But AI, it'll be even more important in AI than it was in just traditional analytics and data management.
Yeah. Okay. Spot on. I think that's all the questions, Lorcan.
Okay, good.
Just before we finish up, you'd mentioned the National Analytics Summit. It's going to be held in the Convention Centre on the 4th of October.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about it and who should attend?
Sure, it's a fantastic day. All our members get free tickets. So as long as they're members of the Analytics Institute, they go free. Otherwise, tickets are still for sale. I think I was just saying to you, Graham, before the kickoff, 2 weeks ago, and I think we were at 1,200 people there already. So we should have 15, 16, 1,700 people at the event. We have speakers coming in from all over the world to talk to us. We've hunted down experts from the States, futurologists, AI experts, robotics, process automation experts. And then, with people like CNN News talking about the US election coverage and how analytics and data plays a part in the way Trump manipulates things and the way Biden manipulates things. We have an artist talking about how she interprets data through art. She does her work with the Museum of Modern Art in New York. We have futurologists talking about what's going to happen next in the world with GDPR, with AI and related technologies. We've a couple of guys coming in from the States that are leaders in huge organizations. So we've all of that stuff. Then we've got some really good panel discussions as well around some of the strategic issues for Irish organizations going forward. So it's a long day. It starts we kick off about 8:45 and we don't finish till about 5:00. We have lunch. We serve lunch. We have coffee breaks, and we have an exhibition of some of the best of Irish companies in the industry as well for people to walk around and meet. It's a big networking day as well. People, it's hard to get them back into the main auditorium sometimes because they're enjoying chatting so much. It's a really, really good day for building a professional profile. I'd urge people, if they have the opportunity, if they're working for member organizations, come along. If they're not, certainly, there are tickets available at analyticssummit.ie or on the Analytics Institute website, which is analyticsinstitute.org.
Perfect, Lorcan. And I look forward to attending myself.
Sure.
Thanks to everybody who attended, and there is a recording of this available for anybody who wishes to access a link. Other than that, thanks very much, Lorcan, and thanks for
Graham. My email address is lorcanmalone at analyticsinstitute.org. If anyone has any questions or wants to chat to me, no problem.
Spot on. Thanks, okay. Lorcan. Thanks, guys.
No problem. Thank you. Good guy.